you were talking about that speech by, I don't remember his name exactly, but the guy who's like a speaker for the mullahs, talking about how if Ghalibaf is negotiating, everything he's doing has to go through the supreme leader and everything. And you said, oh, they're trying to prepare their supporters in case they make a deal. What do you think it would look like if they do come up with some kind of a deal? How would the Iranian people take the next steps to sort of bring back the Shah and install a new government at that point, do you think?
Okay, this is a very good question. So, to give people context, I'm going to play the video that Blake is talking about. But before I do that, let me give you some context, right? So, the situation is really difficult for IRGC and people like Ghalibaf right now because they right now need to be able to talk to the Americans, but it's very difficult for them to do so because they're without Khamenei, without Ali Khamenei, and without having Mushtaba Khamenei coming up with excuses like Ali Khamenei used to. Whenever they capitulate, whenever they bend the knee, whenever they retreat a little bit, they need to do that. But because the Islamic Republic has fed to their own followers that they are very strong and they're defeating the enemies, they have created a whole cult of addicts for victory messages that sees the legitimacy on the Islamic Republic a lot based on the understanding that we are the force against the global Western imperialism and Zionism, and we're standing strongly against Islam, and that's why we deserve to be supported by all Muslims worldwide. That's the narrative. This is why you see a lot of the propaganda and like their messaging regarding all like we are destroying them, we're killing them, because they without that victory, with those messages of victory, they would lose their own base of support, and that's what that more than anything threatens the Islamic Republic, right? So I saw when you had Ali Khamenei, this was easier. Whenever they needed to, whenever their weakness was becoming obvious, because they had to like capitulate or negotiate with the Americans, or basically not respond strongly with the Israelis, they had this cult of personality. Ali Khamenei, he would come up with this reason, like some retarded reasons for why they're doing that, and that's actually a strength or not. And the people, not all, but people will buy it. It's not all, because we saw some even defections before, but when these things happened, but Ali Khamenei wasn't 100% able to convince them, but it was effective to some extent. But without Ali Khamenei, Mujtaba Khamenei is not around to be able to do anything like that. And even if he was, he wouldn't be as effective as his father, right? By the way, guys, I could report to you also that we just since in the 24 hours ago, I am seeing that pro-regime Iranians are more than ever frustrated regarding the weak reaction against Israel and America. For example, when we see these propaganda messages by the Islamic Republic saying that we're strong or that we're destroying them, that we're defeating them, if you look into the comment sections, you see pro-regime Iranians saying like, shut the hell up, you guys haven't done any attacks, serious attacks on Israel for 1 week. Like, are you actually going to do something, or are you just going to keep lying to us, right? So the comments are like as bad as half and half. Like, it's like it used to be like, I don't know, 80% support and 20% of the pro-regime Iranians being frustrated. Now it's getting to half and half. So there's a lot of frustration regarding pro-regime people. Like some of them are not buying it, that the attacks are strong. So what Blake is responding to was this video that I shared on the live stream yesterday. So this is one of the famous Maddahs. Maddah is basically a religious vocalist, one of the Ali Khamenei's favorite Maddahs, and Maddah was Ali Khamenei's favorite way to basically spread his propaganda. And let me just play this video. This is in the crowd. He's talking to pro-regime people who are occupying the streets right now and telling them this. Look at this. Saying right now the final say rests with His Eminence Mujtaba Khamenei. So he's basically trying to do what Ali Khamenei used to do, by telling people like it's okay if they're negotiating because Ali Khamenei says so. But now without Mujtaba Khamenei's presence, this Karimi guy is trying to speak on behalf of Mujtaba Khamenei to have a similar effect on these people. It's saying like Ghalibaf, because Ghalibaf doesn't have as much as respect among these hardliners, like Ali Khamenei, for example. So they're trying to say that, Mujtaba Khamenei is giving him permission to do these things, right? Whether it is war or negotiation, whatever he says prevails. Like whatever Mujtaba Khamenei says, that's what would prevail. And rest assured, figures like Dr. Ghalibaf, figures like Dr. Ghalibaf and others make no decisions without his approval and coordination. And we know that His Eminence wants what is best for the people. Okay, so this shows that they're trying to find a way to negotiate. Remember, guys, when President Trump came out and said that, oh, I'm talking to them, they give me a great gift, negotiations are happening, Ghalibaf immediately came and posted on X that we're not talking, we're not negotiating. But now we're saying like, okay, the problem that these people have is the ideal situation was for them to tell their own followers that we're not negotiating, but be able to negotiate secretly with President Trump behind the scenes. The problem that they're having is President Trump just comes and says it out loud to the whole world. They're like, oh my God, how like they want, they're like trying like, can we negotiate with you without actually revealing that we're negotiating with you? But the problem is that President Trump is not going to do that, because just like they have to deal with their own internal politics, President Trump also has to deal with his internal politics, and he needs to demonstrate that these people are bending the knee, because he needs to show in America that, this whole narrative that we're losing this war is wrong. These people are actually really desperate to negotiate because they're losing. So that's why President Trump is not going to agree to just being quiet about the fact that these people are bending the knee. So this is why they now need to come and sell the idea that they're negotiating. But here's the thing, Blake, your question is like, what if they negotiate, what will happen if they come up with a deal? The negotiation doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to come up with a deal, right? Remember, the last couple of times the worst attacks happened when they were negotiating, right? I even showed on the show yesterday that there was that the Islamic Republic on state TV, they say like, yeah, guys, we should be the most worried when we're negotiating with them, because the worst things that they have ever done to us, it was in the middle of the negotiations, right? So just because they're negotiating doesn't mean that they're going to be a deal. And even if there is a deal, first of all, if the deal is not 100% full surrender, it might lead to a ceasefire. A ceasefire doesn't mean the end of the military operations completely. It might just give the Americans and Israelis some breathing room to basically rearrange their forces and then come back in at it again at a later date, just like we saw that many times with Hamas and Hezbollah. So, what was your last part of your question?
Well, I guess my question really is, if there is some kind of an arrangement that allows, in name at least, this regime to continue for the moment, if it's not just unconditional surrender, then what would be the next steps for the Iranian people to finish the job, basically, right? Because we want ultimately the people themselves to be the ones who get rid of this government and bring in a new government. But what would those steps look like at that point?
Yeah, so the Islamic Republic right now is collapsing really fast. And even if the military operations stop, the collapse will continue. And what we have to do as Iranians is that we have to keep testing the suppressing ability of the Islamic Republic with maybe some smaller, poking at the regime to evaluate. So we need the people on the ground to evaluate when we could have that big call to action that eventually will help us get to the finish line faster. So we don't know exactly when is going to be that final push, but even without the military operations, you have to understand that a ceasefire might itself weaken the regime, because if you don't have the military operations to focus on, then the regime will have time to turn against itself. So one of the forces that we have on our side is the regime itself, because with all the power vacuum that we have right now, Without military operations, then the power vacuum needs to be filled, and a lot of people within the regime, especially without having Ali Khamenei as the unifying factor, there's going to be a lot of internal civil war and a lot of internal division. So the collapse of the regime will continue internally once the ceasefire, if a ceasefire at any point is announced, right? So we just have to keep swinging at the tree, not knowing which swing will bring down the tree, but we just have to keep swinging, no, with the understanding that at some point the swings will make the tree collapse. One thing that we have to be worried about, I just showed a video that the regime is bringing more forces from outside. Let me actually show that as well as from Iraq. Like we just saw a whole set of new look at this convoy from. So this is the concern, right? So, a convoy of Iran backed militia forces was spotted moving from Iraq toward Iran, according to a video circulating on social media. Some members were later seen in Khorramshahr in southern Iran on Saturday carrying flags of Iran's Popular Mobilization Forces. This is basically Hashd Shabi. And if you look at the video here, let me play the video. So this is what we're fighting against, and these people have no. So guys, you can see Iraqi flags, the Islamic Republic flags, and you could also see Hashd Shabi or Popular Mobilization Forces flags as well. So you see this flag over here. This is basically, let me show you the logo so you guys are familiar with the flag. This is the Hashd Shabi logo right here. And this is in English, it's called the Popular Mobilization Forces. This is one of the Shia proxies of the regime based in Iraq. And they're now moving from Iraq into Iran. To me, this suggests that the Islamic Republic believes that, the uprising might be imminent. So that's why they're bringing suppressing forces. It also shows that they are lacking the ability to suppress the Iranian people themselves, and that's why they're bringing these forces in. So it keeps going. I'm gonna mute it so you can see the logo here. That's the Hash Shabi logo, and it's like a huge force. Like look at the line; it goes so long, and these are all filled with people who are going there to basically shoot into the crowds of the Iranian people. So this is a huge problem. There's two ways to think about how to address this. One is hoping that the regime's bankruptcy will eventually mean that they're not going to have enough US dollars to pay these people, because these are mercenaries. They get paid to do this. And the other thing that we're hoping at some point will be true is once the Iranian people come out, will the Israeli drones be present at the time that they're out? Like we're not talking about just taking the IRGC bases and the Basiji bases before the final call to action happens. And also we're not talking about just the drones hitting the checkpoints and Basijis and IRGC suppressing forces before the call to action happens. It seems that based on the suppressing ability of the regime, we need the drones to be present when the Iranian people come into the streets. We saw something resembling that happening. It was reported that happened during the Charshamba Suri celebrations. People reported that there were drones protecting Iranians when the Iranian people were celebrating Charshamba Suri. So that is going to be what's going to be needed when that day comes. We also need more organization and more preparation and more instructions regarding how to fight regime forces by the Iranian. We also might need more specific parts of the Gardage of Iran, the immortal forces, to actually know how to use weapons. Not all, like I'm not talking about arming the Iranian people. I'm talking about specific units that have been trained on that and are strategically. It would help that before we get to that big call to action, that we do establish the understanding by the regime that they're not safe in the streets of Iran. And if this takes a long time, it might not it might not be a bad idea to wait a little bit, because right now the regime understands that this is the greatest threat to them, so they're occupying the streets in great numbers. I even showed you yesterday that they're holding the weddings of IRGC people in the streets to keep occupying the streets. I don't know how long they could do this. Like if you wait a little bit, eventually this is going to be exhausting, demoralizing, demotivating. So waiting it out, and instead of just just having a mass protest by Iranian people and having these people shoot into them. Maybe if we wait until these people, because these Shabi people going to Iran, they're getting paid. So maybe waiting out until they eventually go back home or see that the money is not being paid, because I know like some IRGC people haven't been paid for 2 months, and these non-Iranians are getting paid while their own forces are they're getting the Iraqis are getting paid while their own Iranian IRGC people are not getting paid. So that's going to cause a lot of frustration. But the demoralization, looking at their commanders dying, having to sleep in the streets because their bases are not there, if and the civilians that they have in the streets going hey there, if we wait too long, they can't keep this up for forever. Eventually these people are going to go home. So waiting a little bit and also terrorizing them by having a few parts of the Garda Javidan attacking them here and there, that would help us for like to get ready for that final call to action. And waiting out this phase might be a good idea. And this is why we need to be patient and not saying like why aren't the Iranian peoples out yet. It's good to wait out this phase and let this pass before we do that.
Yeah, and actually it addresses, so like my big concern with a ceasefire is that my hope is that when we get to the point when the Iranian people come out, that one, we will have the Immortal Guard at least a little bit equipped, but two, that we will have American and Israeli drones and possibly other firepower in the air, kind of angels from above, so that if the regime tries to bring in mercenaries on technicals with their dishkas or whatever, that we can just annihilate them before they can do any damage.
Yeah.
So that I think is my biggest concern about any kind of deal, is if America is then like, well, we can't interfere now because we have a deal, and doesn't want to
Oh
give
well,
support like that.
let me. One thing that could happen, and I'm not saying it would or not, we could have America saying, "Okay, I'm going to back down, but I didn't make any agreement on behalf of Israel." Right? Like
Yeah,
you could,
Israel is going to stay there.
yeah,
They're not going to
yeah.
make a deal, but
So, so I mean, most of the things that Americans could take out and Israelis couldn't have already been taken out. And America is going to make a deal on behalf of America. Israel is its own independent, nation state, and America, like I'm pretty sure the regime wants the deal to be that America also holds Israel back. But whenever we saw Americans holding Israel back, it was more regarding major operations like bombings. Maybe they're gonna put Iraqi and Ghalibaf on a no-kill list, but I don't think you're gonna be seeing Americans telling Israelis to not do any drone operations in the streets of Iran. And honestly, that's what we need on the day that we have the call to action. So as long as we have that and Israel's presence in the streets of Iran via drones, that would be helpful. And also, I wouldn't be really upset if a ceasefire happens, because my understanding is that it doesn't mean that they completely let this go. Like ceasefire doesn't mean that we're not going to come back. Ceasefire doesn't mean end. Ceasefire means pause. That's
right.
what it means
I
to me.
even wonder
Yeah.
if we do a ceasefire and then the people come out and they try to fight them, if Trump is then like, well, part of the ceasefire conditions are that you don't fight your own people, so we're okay annihilating you as you try to fight them.
Yeah, I mean, there are many. I don't know if they're going to put that in the terms of the ceasefire, because President Trump needs to sell this to internally, and he needs to focus on what it, and the conditions needs to focus on what's in it for America. But if that happens, like the Islamic Republic violates like the terms of. I'm pretty sure they're going to violate the terms of the ceasefire enough for there to be an excuse to go back in.